Dave must be sleeping.
That was interesting.
I'll have to defend him. Oh, you're here. I was going to defend your honor that you weren't
No,
sleeping.
I've been talking to him all morning, so doesn't mean I can't.
Spreading
What, you're
Seriously.
going to flag off my buddy?
half truths about me.
The Irish fighter in me jumps in straight away.
Thanks, Judy. Thank you. I appreciate that. For some reason, Zoom decided that if I try to launch it in Chrome, it just didn't want to do anything.
Yeah, my Zoom's having like a very rough time today, so they'll be here.
However, Firefox worked just fine. I don't know. Technology is hard.
Or yay, open source.
All right. If y'all would like to indicate your presence in the note sheet, I'm not sure how much we're actually typing here. Probably do most of our work in the spreadsheet, but just in case. Okay.
Oof, it's the 20th of October. That's the day today.
I know. It was just July yesterday, I think.
Right?
All right. I think we should get started. So I think everybody got the link to the notes. I'll drop it one more time in there just in case. And let's talk about the spreadsheet. There is the link to the spreadsheet. I'm going to try to share my screen. Hopefully that'll make life a little bit easier. Although I'm not gonna be able to see people if they raise their hands, so I'll have to ask you all to help me out with that.
You could just move the participants window to a different monitor, like I do.
So when I share my screen, the participants window shrinks down to a little teeny tiny sliver.
You can exit full screen, hit view and exit full screen, and then you can monkey around with it again. Or you can just live in one screen.
I'm on multiple screens. I just the window shrinks down and I cannot expand it, which is confusing. But that's not your problem. That's my problem.
Computers.
Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
F11 works. Sometimes F11 will give you full screen. Maybe not.
Oh man. It's gonna happen. If I disappear, it's Judy's fault.
Okay, so I put a couple of things into this first one just as a first pass to see if the matrix made sense. It is making mostly sense to me. And all that I've done so far is, so I just skipped over the SKF 159 labs that need to be sorted. Because someone else probably knows those better than I do, and they're not hyperlinked. But I've taken some of the courses that were at the bottom of that and from Wheeler's working doc, but I haven't gotten all the way through the working doc. But so far, the personas matrix is working for me. that's all I have to say so far.
All right, let's walk across the spreadsheet and just validate that everyone is cool with what we've got in each of the columns. Anybody has any suggestions? It's time to speak up. So we threw an ID number in the first column. That should not be too controversial. We have the title, hyperlink to the source in the second column. Also should not be too controversial. Column C is content type. So if I jump over here, currently content type is what we have listed in column A. As a general statement, before we get into some of this, I would again suggest that we try and make this as simple and general as possible, just to make our lives a little bit easier and make this whole thing a little bit more flexible. That being said, what do we feel about the content type? Do we think that the list we've got there is good to start? Is there anything on there that we think can be combined or needs to be separated? I'm seeing a
I
couple
think it's
thumbs
fine.
up here. Is everybody cool? If no one has any major concerns with that, Go ahead,
Hands-on and
Randall.
coding code challenges are kind of the same.
Yeah.
They're all hands-on experience.
What if we change it to hands-on / coding / lab?
That works. Yeah.
That's saving electrons.
Hey, you gotta save those ones and zeros where you can. All right, get rid of that.
Challenges might be a better word than coding. Maybe that's just me reading it.
What do we think?
Hands-on
But
challenges.
just go to hands-on lab.
Yeah, just that. Yeah,
Just hands-on lab, like
yeah.
that. I
Or
like
just
that.
lab.
That's even less.
There we
Just
go.
lab.
It's really command line approach
Lab for
today.
lab.
All right. I have a question. What's the difference between a video and a presentation or a conference talk
And a webinar for that.
and a webinar for that matter?
I think we can delete the video because there's a difference between a presentation, like a conference talk, and a webinar. But those-
Well, I guess what about slides? Like, you know how some people just share slides, but they don't have a video?
Isn't that a presentation?
That's guides, documentation.
I'm good with guides and documentation.
So get rid of video.
Yeah, so maybe we title that live presentations, conferences, and then below static guides and talk and documentation.
What do you think about that?
Sure.
I'm good with that. Yeah.
Because a lot of like the SKF stuff has both of those. They've got like like a walkthrough and then a demo or a hands-on demo. And so I'd love for people to be able to like skip over the section of training if they just want to do the demo for a cert. So I want them tagged.
That should be possible, yes. We have a labs menu, and then we're gonna start trying to embed labs into the respective sections of content where they're relevant.
Cool. Awesome.
All right. So the other one that I wanted to ask about is project. Do we need to keep project as its own thing? And if so, can I get rid of the example? For the sake of brevity.
Do we have an example we could look at to see how
Are
it's
they a
different from
lab?
other things?
Are project labs? Like, are they interactive labs?
Yeah, sure.
I'm just wondering, like interactive, the user has to do something. Other than that, you're just watching a presentation or going through slides. Hackathon is kind of interactive. You have to do something.
Okay, how about skill-based project? Is that what this would be defined as? Because we've got demos, which is me repeating somebody else's work, but a skills-based project implies that I've done something new with knowledge.
I think we're gonna like so in
So this-
OSWAP. Yeah, go ahead.
No, actually, go ahead. Yeah.
In OSWAT, what they have is projects. I can send you a demo, for example, is what somebody just submitted to SKF. But like it's, for example, like this guy did another front end for like the requirements tool. So you can go, he has a project where you can go in there, select a bunch of like things like my app is going to do this. And basically it generates a requirement like tool. So that's what they would define as projects, is people doing stuff like that.
So, professional security training vendors like Security Journey, once you reach a certain level, they ask for you to demonstrate a skill.
Yeah.
So, here's what your objective is. Go ahead and code it, and then that project is turned in and reviewed for completeness. So, yeah, I think we need to keep it. I would like to get rid of the example, and maybe we can figure out a way to rephrase it. Somebody had a better suggestion before.
Is that materially different than a hands-on lab? I mean, at the end of the day, I
Material,
understand.
very materially different. It's so it's exactly what they just said. So this would be the capstone essentially. So
Yeah.
after they've done the hands-on, I need them to be able to, can they drive it without autopilot on? And if not, I can't cert them. So that I would say that's a skills-based project or skills demonstrating project.
Do we like project? Do we like skills-based project?
I like skills-based project. And I also like to add, / capstone. I think that.
Yeah, and what I really love about this is that is like that capstone project. If it's tied back to OS, I can reward and incentivize. So I love that.
I was just going to ask if we are going to include skill-based project and people are going to have to submit something.
We
what
have
is
to,
the
we
reward
have
for-
to, because that's, I mean, honestly, that's how this has to be fundamentally different. There's
Yeah.
so many curated training resources right now, and no one can get jobs because no one can demonstrate skill without being in a job. That's our biggest gap. So
Yeah.
it's going to be red all over the place.
Okay. Did we say earlier we want to get rid of webinar? We're including that in live presentation.
Can we call that technical webinar? Because for me, that is distinctively different from a live presentation, because like live presentations can be good, valuable content generally. But when I'm seeing a technical webinar, it's for a technical outcome.
Any your thoughts on that?
Technical webinar is fine.
Cool.
I think we understand the concept. If we need to refine the specific word later, I don't think that'll kill us.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we've got the buckets.
I think we
generally
understand the
defined.
category.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. We have demo. Is demo different than a technical webinar? Or live presentation or hands-on lab?
Mm,
It'd be very similar to a hands-on lab. Maybe you could do like hands-on lab / demo.
well, look, why don't we just, okay, so I'm going to recommend that we remove the label of demo so that we enable ourselves to have a direct pathway from what I would recommend, right, is like blogs entry to a live presentation on context, goes to a webinar on the subject, goes to a hands-on lab, goes to a skills-based project. So I want them to have exactly the skills that they need and then to immediately transpose that onto a new domain. So if we remove demo and understand that the hands-on lab will be sort of the third step of a 4-part training process to accelerated technical skill, we're set.
Any your thoughts on
In
that?
my mind, the only thing where it differs, Saul, is those people that record like their terminal, so you could like replay their terminal.
Yeah, but I call that a technical webinar because that's static, static
Even if
stream
they don't talk?
content. Yeah. So for me, the fundamental difference is that if it's static, this is the cognitive engineer in me. If it's static streamed content, that's going to have a very different memory impact than a hands-on lab, which is why I'm labeling them so differently. So yes, they would do the demo first
I'm
or
good with
sort of
that.
watch someone. But I want to like limit the security training journey to getting hands-on keyboards fast.
Fair.
So we're good with getting rid of demo.
I think so.
And also some learners aren't necessarily going to go down the hands-on path. They just need to understand the concept and be conversant.
Yeah.
Podcast, is a podcast different than a live presentation?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you want to leave that on its own?
It's kind of
Yeah.
in the cluster category of like blogs and podcasts. But we got to label it separately.
Do we combine blog and podcast together or leave them separate?
I would not. We can leave them separate.
Okay. And then I think we said earlier, hackathon was very similar to a hands-on lab. Thoughts about getting
Or
rid
a
of-
skills-based project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say maybe we should consider these as there's contextual content, which is blogs, webinars, statics. Well, not statics, just the general content. Then we've got our sort of 4-part pathway where you'd go to like a webinar, presentation, hands-on lab, skills-based. And then I think the hackathons are kind of, does hackathon make sense objectively with the part 1 curation part of this? I think a hackathon is an implementation, and it would be tied to maybe a way to coordinate a bunch of skills-based projects, but I don't see that actually being tied into the curation of data objects, essentially, which is what this is aimed at.
I think that's a fair point.
See
I'm
some
fine with that.
nodding. Okay, so let me see if I can fix this. Put that there. Get rid of that. And we're going to sort these. This data should always be sorted. Okay.
While we're
content
here,
type.
let me share this. So last year I was running like a security type of club for the University of California, Irvine. And we had a lot of people sign up from like all over the US that were all in all sorts of different degrees of security training. And I just want to share this, that a lot of people have this ideology that they never have to learn coding in security. And it was really hard sometimes to get people to understand fundamentals that were just because they were in terminal and people were like, no, it needs to have a UI.
Yeah.
So-
Well, okay. So I'm also kind of thinking that a persona we're not considering here is that level of learner. So there's a good amount of like management material out there that we could bring into this, like DevSecOps management. But also, I think something that I would love to see, and this is just a me note and wouldn't happen in year 1 and probably not even on this track, but like I was talking to a bunch of policymakers about AI and ML and open source on Monday, and I couldn't, it was awful. It was awful. And I came up with
Aw.
this metaphor, and I hope they weren't too offended, but I was like, it's like you're all trying to regulate the automotive industry, but you're all pathologically afraid to learn how to drive a car. This is so stupid. Step away from my machines. So yeah, I think maybe there's not a lot of cluster of education around that, which is why I'm still having to sit my body on panels. But if I can pull some together, a like policy, CISO, OWASP, not OWASP, OSPO persona might be something we're missing for this.
We are missing that, yes.
Which is a great segue into the next set of columns, which is the personas.
Cool.
I actually like the new graduate persona you had, Saul, because I would actually put those people, because there's other talks that I've had in Gen 2 about how the term of security has changed over the years, and your education, like in your definition of security, really depends on what year you kind of went to school and when
Yeah.
you learned all this.
I know somebody that's doing a keynote on that topic next week.
Oh yeah,
I wonder who
would
that might
love to
be.
get the details on that. Well, yeah. If you have a video crop, I'd like to see it after.
Yeah, it'll be
It's
out.
going to be a panel, but yes,
Very
it's a
cool.
panel keynote because I'm lazy.
But yeah, I would argue that because I've legitimately had people like break down and yell at me that so and so told them and promised them that security didn't involve coding, and
That is a
Glenn
lie.
was like, "This is completely wrong. This is not acceptable, Randall."
So my question around personas, Sal, you had changed on the matrix tab and you added in app security down to new security
Mhm.
persona. And I'm fine with those categories, but I think we've lost things like we just identified, OSPO,
Yeah.
executive, even we originally, this whole group at the very first meeting was talking about how do we help college students? How do we help primary and secondary education students? How do we help people that are changing careers? And I don't see how the things you have listed address those perspectives.
Yeah. So I think just one clarification here, and then I think all we need is a clarification on another column. So we're going to need two separate matrices, and I think we're under scoped on the way that we're defining right now the learner level and audience.
Mhm.
So we need both of those matrices together. I think if we have this
Yeah.
matrix, as many personas as we can, that is our end point to the kind of education we need at the end of 2 years. But right now, we really, and I think this is kind of the bummer here, I'm really struggling to get us those like long range, like to even get us that full AppSec from, right, maybe even high school all the way up, because we're missing a lot of those resources. But for that, could we just make the learner level in column P more nuanced?
It's
Is right
open
now-
source. We can do whatever we want.
Yeah, because right now it's just beginner, intermediate, etc. And we could make
Mhm.
this the like student, new grad. And then I kind of think the persona of like career changer can just be /OSPO, because that's sort of the same knowledge. They kind of need a bucket of everything,
This is-
but not super high level.
OSPO's only been a thing for like a year and a half.
Yeah.
But let me also say this, because we ran into this at SKF, is at what point, because like, for example, a lot of people coming into the industry don't have basic skills like bash scripting. So at what point do we like say like this isn't something we're going to cover? Because if you don't know bash scripting, it's going to be really hard for you to do
Well, and
SKF.
I also don't want to get into IP subnetting.
Right.
There's a lot of things that exist within the security domains that we don't necessarily want to focus in on. I mean,
Yeah.
and
Right.
we would say, hey, if you're curious about this, go talk to the Cisco Academy or whatever.
Well, we've been thinking about, and this is one thing that came up as a suggestion from an OSWAT or I don't know how to pronounce it correctly. I keep changing the pronunciation.
OWASP?
OWASP. But
it's a
Glenn
wasp.
keeps telling me it's wrong. But
Well, he's Dutch. And it's very
Yeah.
clearly a wasp is their mascot.
Yeah,
I just
thanks,
had to
man.
talk for OWASP last night, and they pronounced it OWASP. So
Yeah.
I think we're good.
A nasty little bug, but they're so helpful.
You're right. But what I was gonna
Good
say
wasp.
was it's yeah, I forgot what I was gonna say, but but yeah, you get my point. It's early. It's like 6 a.m. for me. So
Well,
and I've been up all night retooling LLVM on Gen 2. So
and I think
Yeah.
from like an SKF perspective, you know, the career paths or career types Sal has listed here under personas on the matrix tab. I don't know that you are as interested about that.
okay.
You're focused on the content, and eventually we will figure out, oh, we need to borrow, you know, these 3 labs and this podcast and this class, and that makes endpoint mobile security training.
Oh, I remember what I was gonna say. We were going to link to MDN.
To what?
MDN, Mozilla's web documentation,
Okay.
Yeah, that's
because
cool.
they're open source. They cover very basic topics in detail. And yes, that's what I think one of our people suggested. We have yet to really talk about it, but that was one of the suggestions of how to handle that.
And what would doing that achieve for us?
Well, if we start talking about things that are not defined, for example, acronyms and whatnot, that
Yeah,
then they
it
can.
just gives us another massive repo of curated content that will be maintained. Because
Yes.
Mozilla actively maintains a massive educational portal that's angled. I would say that their Mozilla educational content is kind of in our gap space of that early career. It's usually targeted towards onboarding more so.
Correct.
If we can API to that, great. And again, they maintain, so.
Sounds like
So-
we need to
so-
make sure we add that to our resource list.
Yeah, so how, but do we need to have a conversation with them about hooking up first, or?
Eventually,
No.
yes. Well, eventually,
They're pretty
yes.
open.
We'd like to talk
They're
to
pretty
them.
open source about it too, though. Just for
Yeah,
the record.
If I may pull us back to the information on the spreadsheet for now. Those are good call outs. If you please like to add those into the agenda, so we don't forget to follow up on those different things, I would appreciate that. I'm going to pull us back to the task at hand here. For the personas that we have listed, I think from what I'm hearing, generally speaking, we have agreement on these. I had one suggestion, which is very nitpicky. Instead of saying new security persona, say other security persona. So
Okay.
people don't misunderstand that, oh, I'm a new security person, so that's me.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I have no issue with these personas. Does anyone have anything they'd like to change or add to what's listed here?
I don't know that our purview is churning out identity and access management. Being a 20-year veteran of identity and access management, I don't feel that our purview is necessarily creating more of me.
Okay, I'm happy to take it out.
It's definitely topics we have to talk about: authentication, authorization, multi-factor. We have to talk about all those things.
It's always in things, but it's never the single topic of, so I'm happy to remove that as an identity.
Yeah, and I think it's more of it needs to be included in the domains of things we're educating on.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Then like advanced detection and response. So you're talking about threat hunting.
Yeah, so these were, I mean, so this list came out of the types of things that we'd want to reward and incentivize. So I think we can consolidate. I can keep the more minutia list, but we can consolidate these into genuine personas, not just education.
I have input. Could cloud and network? I mean, they're kind of the same.
I want to keep those separate. I do think those are separate, but I kind of think it's not totally the same, but cloud and supply chain will be going more together over time, but I would keep them separate for now.
Okay.
I mean, I definitely recognize these as roles and specific areas of training we want to provide to people, but I don't personally see them as personas per se.
Yeah, and we need to get this to the point where I would be comfortable pursuing this work on this spreadsheet if I know that in a year's time, I have a table that anyone else can read that says these are the personas we targeted. So yeah, help me to make these as identifiable as possible.
All right.
But for the purpose of the spreadsheet, I think these are fine to leave as is, and as we start tagging, so we can continue momentum.
Sounds good. And then I'd recommend on the other side, instead of a drop-down menu, we just create a separate sort of matrix that identifies the core key audiences so that we can do the same and say it can be multiple.
Yeah, I agree with adding that. Better fidelity is easier to get done in one pass.
All right. I would like to skip over stack language momentarily and talk about column O, which is content theme. Curb and I had some conversations around this the other day. We have a proposal we'd like to pitch to the group here as far as changing this from content theme to domain. And Curb, did you want to discuss?
Yeah, if you
your
go to the last
suggestion?
tab.
There you go.
So within the world, there is a cybersecurity education organization called ISC Squared. They produce a certification that is incredibly well peer reviewed, continually updated, called the CSSLP. And they arrange application security into 8 domains. And this is informed. They have academics, industry people. It's very well reviewed and maintained. So my proposal is for content theme, we organize off of these domains. And I show you below here on the XREF tab, the first within column E. Yeah. So column E right there, we all talked about those, the first 15 things there where we like those. Those were things we wanted to talk about. So go over to domain mapping. And I show you how all that aligns to the 8 domains.
Cool.
And then Glenn and Randall have been talking about ASVS. So I took that content, and that's all the things highlighted in green, and show how it lines up with the domain model.
Oh,
And, pardon me?
dope.
Yeah. And if you like look at column F, for example, in all of our conversations, we seem to have a gap. We don't talk about lifecycle management at all. So we don't talk about dependency management. We're not talking about curating anything. We're not talking about having a update policy or how to get things out into the world. So, you leveraging this model, I think we can quickly see where we have a lot of content. So like the ASVS stuff, which is predominantly what's already in SKF. So we have a lot of content around doing the coding thing, but we don't have a lot of content around like architecture requirements, for example.
We actually, SKF does have requirements.
Cool. And I know David and I have talked a lot about security architecture principles in the year. So I know we have information there we can leverage. But if we go with the domain model and categorize things here, so categorize it at the broad level, and you can see that the secure software implementation and programming bucket, we have a lot of available content in that category. So we're not losing that information, but we're able to kind of up level things to speak generically to a category.
Okay.
So what's everyone's thought about that proposal?
I think that sounds very good to me. And then we can just make it in the spreadsheet so that as soon as I choose the broader category, I can only choose from the sub ones, and then
Yeah.
no data curation issues. Thank you. I think I could use from SKO, like if we can hyperlink, or what is the best way? Because right now there's 159 labs that I do not have. How can I sort those more easily?
Glenn is on this call.
Did he hop on?
Yeah, he's on
Hey,
this call.
Glenn.
Yeah, I'm listening. Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt.
Oh, I
you.
never see that picture of you. You look so professional.
With other words, you don't recognize me.
You look very relaxed whenever I see you, which is great.
Yeah. So the question itself, could you repeat it one more? You wanted to sort it, or?
Well, yeah, no, I mean, it just came up in this call. Like there's a couple of things that we think we have gaps to, which may be in your training already. But right now, I'm personally having a hard time searching through the SKO stuff to find it based on these searchables. Is there a better way to search through your system? Because right now we just have all of the labs on a spreadsheet without hyperlinks.
Yeah. No, I think at the moment not. The idea was actually, like Randall already mentioned in the call, to link them to the specific course material, for example, from David Wheeler to start with. We do have a spreadsheet where we actually correlated them all with the testing guide. So that is more the offensive security part and the security testing. So that area we already mapped, but we also need to do similar for the ASVS, and thus also all the categories that you see here. But that is something that we're busy with actually. But for the testing guide, we have it, so the offensive security part. So I will probably look up the link, the Excel that we created, and try to share it in a moment. At least then you see what the coverage is from yeah, the testing guide, the offensive part.
Sounds good.
So in other words, Saul, we cover it both ways. We cover it from the point of view of you as a developer and like blue team, and then we also cover it like if you're testing for it, which would be red team.
Awesome. Yeah.
All right, so I believe, hopefully that thread's been answered. I believe that we've agreed. I didn't see anyone else
Correct.
raising their hand about the domains. Does anyone have any additional feedback on that? All right, so
I think it's a great idea.
this domain.
Why recreate the wheel when somebody is already
Exactly.
wasted a lot of
Yeah, and-
time making it for you?
Like by using that, you can follow the whole development life cycle, which I think is really like makes sense to a lot of people because it can insert themselves into which area is relevant to them.
All right, I'm going to bump the domain category over here to the left of stack language. When we're
Yeah,
done, I'm not
and,
gonna
and
worry about that right now.
we'll change it to shift it to be, we'll have everything, the domains listed that we can go off and do tick boxes on.
All right. Now for learner level, again, I think we agreed that we were going to switch this up into more of a matrix style like we did with personas. I think the ask, Sal, that you brought up is to make it a little bit more granular than we've got for beginner, intermediate, advanced.
Yeah, and we've defined those, I think, in plan 1. If we're defining personas. Let me see what I can bring up. Sorry, all my computer's going very slow today.
Same. 1.3. Yeah, we missed a couple of these too.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, these are them.
Why my computer's slow is because I have every working group in SIG I have open with all the repos, all the issues, all the artifacts in different tabs.
You just like having 57 tabs open.
I just don't like having to find them. There it is. It's already open.
All right.
Well,
So did what I just do there, is that correct?
Yeah, that's everything.
So are we okay with those as learner levels?
I think so. I mean, we've discussed this before, so this is out of a few chats.
Yeah, I think it's pretty good.
And maybe like, for example, like compliance, maybe we change that to like manager, OSPO type thing.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Any other feedback about learner levels?
I think that's good. As long as that's, that'll be a matrix style on this page.
Yeah, do you want that as tick boxes too?
Yes,
I'll
please.
have to put a comment in there for that. So,
All right.
all right. So let's jump back here to column N. We have listed here as stack language, which corresponds to what we have in column B right now on the XREF table. Not everything is going to have a language, obviously.
Right.
So how do we need to add more information to this? Do we need to adjust the intent of this column, or do we just leave it blank for things that are not language based?
This was fine, but I do think we need to have both a one for no language and multi-language, because I couldn't for several of these define it because it had both like Java and Python.
Okay.
David in the past also suggested pseudocode.
But
And I think,
I don't know.
if we have agreement on, I'm sorry, go ahead, Glenn.
No, I want to say pseudocode. Yeah, I get the idea, but if you really want to teach something about secure coding, the devil's in the details, right? If you use the load safe library for, I don't know, YAML call loading in Python, you're good. But if you use the normal load function, right, in that library, then you're screwed. Then you have code execution when you load YAML calls. So I don't know
True.
if pseudocode is really the way
No.
to go.
Let's leave it out. Plus, I mean, we're trying to be very clear here in establishing a sincere statistical pathway between training and employment. And I can
Yep.
I can employ someone who's trained in Rust, not pseudocode.
I think
And
I think his point was that there are examples that exist that are written in pseudocode.
But I would just
And
call those no language, and we can, if we want
that's
to.
fair.
And I would propose, since not every artifact we have is going to be directly affiliated with a language, if I think we're happy with this initial list, and we always can, if there's different languages or different techniques, we can talk about adding that, because there's plenty of space within the column to add those as we start categorizing things.
Yeah.
But I think no language and multi-language are very useful. But if we're talking to somebody about GDPR, that's not necessarily directly related to a language.
Yeah, GDPR.
It's the best.
That's awesome. All right. Any additional feedback on that column? All right. So then what we've got here left is last updated, which that's useful information to have. Someone's got to keep that updated. Someone's got to keep this updated with the last updated, which is going to be difficult with a bazillion items, but we can worry about that
James,
later.
Sorry to go back. I'm also, it's my brain that's slow, not Sal's computer today. Did we include a space for other language to catch Go and any other things? Is that under multi-language?
So both yes and no. Actually, this is an open question if we're categorizing now. The reason why only these languages are represented now is because those would be for year 2. So these were the ones that we had resources for. Do we want to put in the other languages now? Actually,
They're also listed on 2.1.
yeah.
I personally think it's useful. Just
Yeah, I think
because it's on the list doesn't mean we're doing anything about it yet, but
yes,
that
that's
eliminates
basically
rework in the future.
Kubernetes and Go laying down. I'm doing things. I have documentation.
That's, we haven't
It's
committed
just-
to do Go specifically yet.
If we find something on Golang, I think we should be able to input it now, even if we're not going to use it now. That, if we come across something that's another language,
Mhm.
we're curating, collecting the content, aren't we? Not just, so we can stash it for later.
Right.
Did we say it was in, is this it right here?
Thank you, Judy.
Yes.
Oh man, we don't have .NET Core.
Okay, I'll add those in, the ones that aren't there, once we're done here. Last column we've got on here right now is found by. What's the intent of this?
I would find it useful if there was an artifact on the list and somebody put it there, and I needed to ask a question about it. I could go, if I was unable to find information, I could go talk to Judy, for example, if she found this awesome.
Yeah, this is going to be like Git blame. It's like
not blame, but if I had a question,
Judy keeps putting
submitted by.
miscategorizing absolutely everything. Actually, that's a good point with regard to some of the descriptions today. Only for I was here, I might not understand how to categorize certain things. So thank you for certain explanations today. So when we are collecting the content, I presume it's other people that are not on this call that's going to collect content. Does it make sense? Or is this complete overkill to have a small explanation to certain harder to understand.
We're going to write a primer on what we mean by these words.
Why do I should have always know Grove is like 40 steps ahead of me here. Okay, that's okay.
I didn't say I was going to do it, but that's something
we're going to do it. Yes.
But no, that's a very valid point, Judy. And because this will be, we're going to have a freeze, so to speak, at some point where we stop writing content for year one, taking submissions, but we want to make sure that the list is always available for people to put ideas for our backlog for future work. So again, that submitted by, I think would be useful just to say, hey, Dave, why do you think this class about GDPR is useful to us?
GDPR is the best.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, then we'll put it in.
Some of the major tech companies mightn't agree with you that are based in Ireland at the moment and find millions of dollars because of GDPR. We won't mention any on this call.
Yeah.
And maybe eventually this sheet gets turned into a database and we have some type of front end submission form. But I think today, do we think this is good enough to start moving forward once we get the cleanup on it?
Yeah, I think so.
Anybody else have thoughts on that? Like I said, I think that we've accomplished what we set out to do here to get the initial version of this categorization and such put together.
I think this is really helpful for collecting the information rather than just throwing it into a GDoc. So thanks to everybody. My question is how now this list might get very long. There could be many duplicates. If a lot of us are just go to the same places to find our information, is that going to be another step that we go down through it for duplicates and things like that? Or how are we going to manage that? I might name something.
How are we going to manage that, Dave?
Well, we're going to hire a librarian next year to help manage that, right, Crew?
So for now, it's a free for all. Just throw everything that we find in, is it?
How are we going to manage that today?
Yeah.
And then, yes, like in the future, the librarian gets to play with this.
If we can.
Go ahead, Sal.
Sorry. So I think if we can, what I'd recommend right now is that we take, so I've started doing this, that I'm just taking the links off of all of these other spreadsheets on this and putting them to this top front matrix so that we've all got the same reference number for an object. The only thing I haven't done, so SKF, if y'all could do this for your labs, just because I'm not going to commit to 159 evaluations. But if we can have them with all of these indexes on them, then we're in a really, really golden spot. So I would recommend, let's use just this front matrix page. It's traceable, so even if anybody erases it all, we'll get it back, don't worry. And then my last request is that we hold on to this submitted by column only until this becomes a actual object living on a server, at which time I would like my provenance removed from it, so I'm not responsible for maintaining it, please. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Good chat.
Yeah, we're not looking for long-term maintenance, but just while we are
no, we
trying
need
to figure
it.
this out.
Yeah, and then I would say I'd love, I don't know if this will be the final format, but this matrix, I want this to be our current ground of truth. So this is where we're going to try to get to our matrix of actual content for now.
Right. Yeah, we need to have a single source of the truth as we move forward. There's too many other things that are dependent upon this information. So I completely agree with that.
As we're putting together that sort of primer document, can y'all let me know? And I'm going to put a little bit, for me, I'm just putting in this paragraph statements of what the metrics are that we have and how they tie together.
I have a task here on the agenda to kick that off as the next step on this. So I'm sure we're going to be meeting next week this time. So we'll talk about it at that meeting.
Okay, cool.
Just to clarify, Saul, you want me to take all the labs from the SKF tab and put them on this page?
Yeah, I mean, for like not hygiene, just for sanity, I would start with just like copying these columns and putting them like on top on your page and just organizing that whole subset of
Cool.
labs.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
And if I can ask if we could wait until Monday before we start loading a bunch of information into the sheet, give myself and maybe Crow a chance today, tomorrow, just to get things straightened up on here. I'm going to send an email out to the SIG on Monday, letting them know that the spreadsheet that we've got is the final version 1.0. And then please absolutely feel free to start loading information in here.
You got it.
Thank you.
Can a quick question on that? Maybe I've just missed this. I thought we were going to be sent off in different directions, maybe assign different areas so that we're not all looking at IS squared or whatever your favorite content is. Is that our next step, or will we
Yes.
just plow ahead?
There's a number of folks who have asked about when they start putting information here. So I think people have data that they want to start loading in. And if they want to do that, that's great. I think we should try and do some semblance of organization for going out to places we have not already looked at. And SKF obviously is covered. But like you said, Judy, I offered to do ISC squared. There's a couple other ones we had written down. So yeah, I think we're going to ask people to go in certain places and try and reduce the duplication as much as possible.
Mhm.
Did you want me to wait on the email or the communication for Jennifer Bly for the call to add stuff to the sheet?
Let's wait until we get the sheet done. Like Dave mentioned, let's talk about it. He's gonna send an email out Monday, you said?
I'm going to send the
Well,
email Monday saying the sheet's
yeah.
open.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm already in contact with her. So there's already, I gave her something, but I will, yeah.
Yeah, the sheet is not organized yet, so I don't want a bunch of people in here stepping all over it that we have to do rework.
Fair.
So let us get that prepared, as Dave mentioned.
So just let me
Anything
know
else?
when we're ready to go with that.
Dave will send an email.
Yep, I'll send that email on Monday. Anything else to discuss today? All right, stop my share so I actually see everybody again. Cool. Well, hey, thank you very much, everybody, for joining and participating. We were able to get through this. Very much appreciated. We'll have this wrapped up by the end of the week. Wait for the email on Monday, then proceed to add your information. And we'll talk again at the next meeting 1 week from now. Thanks very much. Have a good rest of the day.
All right. Thank you.
Cheers.